Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for November the 9th. Today we are reading together in Job chapter 35. We are slowly making our way toward the end of Elihu's series of speeches to Job and the three friends here in the book of Job: Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. Reading 35 today, 36 tomorrow, 37 on Friday, and then Saturday we'll be getting into finally the Lord's response in Job chapter 38. So I'm certainly looking forward to getting to that. But until we get there, we're going to continue looking at what Elihu has to say here within this particular discourse. So today we're going to focus on within this text. Elihu again is addressing Job, and his main focus seems to be on the fact that Job is clinging to his self-righteousness as opposed to really focusing on God in the situation. Yeah, he looks at Job and he says, well, you think that you're holding on to your righteousness. Do you really think God needs that? Is God affected by what you do? And the reality is that no, God is not affected by what we do. And although that doesn't mean that God does not respond to what we do, he certainly does respond to our effort to honor him or our efforts to dishonor him, our efforts to pray with full hearts to him or our efforts to pray with empty hearts to him. He does have a response to that, although he is not influenced or affected by such things. So let's read about that here in Job chapter 35. Beginning in verse number 1. Job 35 in verse number 1. Then Elihu continued saying, do you think it is just when you say, I am righteous before God? For you ask, what does it profit you, and what benefit comes to me, if I do not sin? I will answer you, and your friends with you. Look at the heavens and see. Gaze at the clouds high above. If you sin, how does it affect God? If you multiply your transgressions, what does it do to him? If you are righteous, what do you give him? What does he receive from your hand? Your wickedness affects a person like yourself, and your righteousness a son of man. People cry out because of severe oppression. They shout for help because of the power of the mighty. But no one asks, where is God my maker? Who provides us with songs in the night? Who gives us more understanding than the animals of the earth, and makes us wiser than the birds of the sky? There they cry out, but he does not answer, because of the pride of evil people. Indeed, God does not listen to empty cries, and the Almighty does not take note of it. How much less when you complain that you do not see him, that your case is before him, that you are waiting for him. But now, because God's anger does not punish, and he does not pay attention to transgression, Job opens his mouth in vain and multiplies words without knowledge. And that is Job chapter 35. Again, as we open up this particular text, looking at Job in verses 1, 2, and 3, Elihu says, do you think it is just when you say, I'm righteous before God? It almost seems as if Elihu is assuming that Job is trying to establish a righteousness of his own. He's saying it seems to be that he's looking at Job and he thinks that Job is trying to say how great he is just because he's a good guy, because he does things that are right, that all this is according to just his good behavior. But I think it's obvious that Job is a man, again, going back to the very beginning of the book. It is stated on numerous occasions that, yes, Job was righteous and blameless. He was a man full of integrity, but he feared God and he turned away from evil. Job's motivation was his fear of the Lord. Therefore, I don't believe that Job here is being pretentious. I don't think he is being arrogant. I don't think he's just trying to establish just himself as being a good guy for his own name's sake, but doing so on behalf of the Lord. He is being the type of man he is because of his fear and desire to serve the Lord. Moving on, we see this idea in verse number 7, or I guess in verse number 6. If you sin, how does it affect God? If you sin, how does it affect God? If you multiply your transgressions, what does it do to him? If you are righteous, what do you give him? Or what does he receive from your hands? Makes me think of Acts chapter 17 and verses 24 and 25, whenever the Apostle Paul finds himself in Athens, and he's speaking about God, the true God of heaven, this unknown God, to the Athenians. And he says concerning that God, that the God who made the world and everything in it, he is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by hands, neither is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives everyone life and breath and all things. And God doesn't need us. And God doesn't need our righteousness. Our transgressions do not assault him. They do not harm him. Yes, he certainly desires for us to be righteous and for us to glorify his name and to honor him as God and honor him as being his image bearers in this world. Yes, he does want that, but he doesn't need it. He desires it, but he doesn't need it. Those are two different things. I believe we understand that. Same thing for sin. He desires that we do not sin, but if we do sin, it doesn't cause God to be any less sovereign, doesn't cause him to be any less divine, any less worthy of honor. But instead, he says in verse number 8 that your wickedness affects a person like yourself, and your righteousness, a son of man. We recognize that we are different than God. God is not influenced by us. He is totally independent of us. But those who are around us, they are dependent upon us in some ways, meaning that we can have influence upon them, that the way they behave might be influenced by the way we behave, that the type of people they are might be influenced by who we are as people. But God continues to be God no matter what. So there's a big difference between the influence we have over God and influence that we have over others. But lastly, I want to think about verse number 13. Down here, verse number 13. Elihu says in Job chapter 35, verse 13, that indeed God does not listen to empty cries, and the Almighty does not take note of it. How much less when you complain that you do not see him, that your case is not before him, and you are waiting for him. You know, there are some people that don't seem to give any concern or care for God at all, except whenever things go poorly. Whenever things go poorly, it's at that point that they get down on their knees and they pray to God to help them. Or whenever they feel as if they've been wronged in some way by God, they might shout at God and be angry with God. God, how could you let something like this happen? Again, God is never on their minds any other time. It's only in these bad times that they want to either try to use God as a crutch or use God as a scapegoat. But whenever I think about the type of people that we're to be and the communication that we're to have with God, I think about what is said in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verses 16 through 18. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verses 16 through 18. We're told within this text to pray constantly, not just whenever things are bad or whenever they're good, but to pray constantly and to give thanks in everything, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Give thanks in everything. Do we go to God and use him as some sort of magic genie or get out of jail free card? Do we only pray to him whenever things are going good for us or whenever we want some sort of blessing? Do we only pray to him whenever things are bad and we want him to fix things, or we want to blame him for our issues? The reality is that God does not listen to empty cries. He does not listen to cries that are anything less than our full hearts displaying within our prayers the desire we have to fully depend upon God. That's what he wants from us. And friends, I'm going to suggest to you that is exactly what God deserves. As our God, as our gracious Lord, who heaps blessings upon us, at all times we need to be praying to him. Again, not just in certain moments whenever we want something out of him or try to lay the blame on him, but we should be people who are praying to him at all times. Are we doing that? Are we a people who are constantly focused on God in every situation, giving thanks and praying to him either out of thanksgiving for what we have, or for strength to do the right thing, or wisdom to be guided to make the best decisions in our lives? What are we doing? Are we just using God as a crutch, or do we recognize him as indispensable, and that communication between us and him is indispensable at all times? May we not be like those who he describes here, who have empty cries, but may we be those who pull our hearts out fully before God in every way at all times. Thanks so much for tuning into this reading on this Wednesday. Hope that you will tune in again tomorrow as we read together on Thursday, November the 10th. We'll be reading together from Job chapter 36, continuing on looking at the discourse given by Elihu here. Only a couple more chapters, and we'll be through and get to move on to God's portion of this text. Tonight is our monthly song, scripture, and supplication service. A lot of men have put in a lot of effort preparing for tonight. I know we still have some who are not able to be out tonight, and I appreciate so much those who have stepped up to fill in spots that were left vacant. And I'm also glad to know that we are expecting to have some who have been sick back with us tomorrow. We're really excited for that. We're very thankful for God blessing those who are sick and hearing our prayers on their behalf of healing. But of course, there are still some who are continuing to deal with illnesses, and we continue to pray for them and hope that they will be back soon with us. I will be in Chattanooga tonight, helping out North Hickson with their fall focus. So I won't be there tonight, but look forward to seeing everybody in person on Sunday. But we'll continue on with our Bible readings, and I'm looking forward to doing that as we continue to march our way through the book of Job. And just a reminder, after we get done with Job, we'll be reading in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes as well. But again, thanks for tuning into this reading on this Wednesday, and have a great service tonight. And looking forward to seeing everybody soon. Continue, please. Like we just talked about today, continue in prayer constantly for those of our church family who could certainly use it at this time. Take care, and God bless.